So here today because I want to talk about Hallowquest. I've just completed my third Hallowquest, and I really kind of want to talk about it a bit and kind of show you the differences between what is out there and what isn't anymore. So we'll go ahead and kind of switch the camera and talk about that and what it's about. So Hallowquest, let's start with the So the Arthurian Tarot, of which there are 3 major versions here, and I'll try to, my camera's a little bit weird, is what this starts with. Let's see, I believe it was originally published, let's take a look, see what it says here. So, really originally published in 1990, I believe, as the Arthurian Tarot. And it came, so let's show you here. I'll just move these out of the way. We'll get back to them here. You can see this is the original deck. It has a double border black surrounded by white. The black is in the card in the doorway shape. I have seen these trimmed. I wouldn't do it, but I have seen people trim these out. They're a bit wider than your standard cards today. The backs are irreversible, so they did not originally do reversals. And sorry, my other camera, it keeps closing, so I'm hoping it's actually doing this because it really sucks when it doesn't work. Anyway, it should. It has a full battery. So, and this pictures the goddess of Logos, which they do talk about in some of the books. But in other words, it's a normal 78 card deck. While the majors stay fairly the same, they do have different names. For example, instead of Death, there's the Washer at the Ford, Cauldron, Green Knight, and all follow Arthurian romances and legends and things like that. Really heavily on the Welsh legends, I will say, that these rely. The minors are spears, swords, stone, and Grail. And I will say that this has had a huge impact on my practice as a pagan. And you can see here on the Flowering Logos, so this is the world card. I can't see, the camera keeps turning off. Okay. And you can see each of the symbols here. And the stone is actually a chessboard, or, and I'm going to pronounce it as like wiffle board, or wiffle board. Also, King's Cross board, chessboard, Last King Standing. There's a bunch of games that are played on this board, actually, though normally we associate with chess or checkers nowadays. And actually, because of this, I have an old chessboard that one of my grandfathers gave me on my altar. Because like I said, this was a big influence on my practice. So, it is a tarot deck. You can read it much like a tarot deck, and many of the meanings really do line up with what you think with Rider Waite, and though the images do not. So the minors are all landscapes, though they can be pretty gruesome. This is Celtic mythology, so lots of heads on pikes. The court cards are people, and then the majors are all major figures from Arthurian legends, so, and some Celtic things. So that is the original deck, and it came with this book in kind of one of those VHS cases, which I do no longer have. This book has seen lots of love. It's already falling apart. I saw a copy of this at Second and Charlie's, just the book by itself. And I almost picked it up because this one is kind of falling apart, but I decided not to. The pages are actually in really good condition, even though they're kind of coming out of the binding. They're actually in really, really good condition and really good paper. So this is it. It's Arthurian Tarot and the Hallowquest Canon book. Now, this is not quite the Hallowquest. So I'm about to show you a bunch of other books and how if this is something you'd like to do, you can also take a look. So this goes a little bit into the mythology and doorways, lays out the tarot deck, talks about how it doesn't use reverse meanings, which they do change later on. You know, goes into what each of the cards are, and different spreads. So the original book came with a few spreads, starting with, God, why does that keep turning off? You know, it talks about this in the Grail. This is a lot about the Grail legend and how it works. The spreads are mostly introspective. There are a few that are kind of fortune-telling, but most of these are meditative spreads, things that you do to kind of explore yourself. So the first one is Pride Wins Anchor, which is one of the ships that Arthur and his people, not necessarily round table at that point. Good Lord. I can't see what I'm doing, camera. Rode into the underworld. Merlin's Mirror, which this figures pretty heavily in the actual Hallowquest. Sovereignty spread, which is only in this book. In the other books, you will not find this spread, and in the reprints, you will not find it either. This is a very interesting spread that uses most of the deck. Mabon's Gate, which I'll find in all the other books. The Excalibur spread, which is also only in this book. Another introspective about learning lessons. And then they kind of go a bit of a traditional tarot route and go with a Tree of Life spread. And this is, you know, it's a pretty good Tree of Life spread. It definitely covers a Tree of Life and talks about the different spheres. Kether, Hokmah, Bina, Gebura, Hesed, Daf. And talks about that and talks about how the majors fit into the Tree of Life. There's also the Three Worlds spread, which is a very introspective kind of tableau spread, which is unique to this book. Then there's some shortcut, you know, keyword type meanings, which with my daily practice, this is probably why this is the most torn up, is the this is the this is the part that I'm at the most. This book also contains number correspondences and bibliography for a lot of Arthurian things. And this is the main book that came with the original deck. So this came together as a set. Hallowquest itself was published in various editions. So this one, which I actually didn't get until recently. Let me bring this up here. This is, I was looking at the copyright. So I believe this one was published first in 1993. This is a Thorson's. This is the Arthurian Tarot Course Quest for All Seasons. So it wasn't called Hallowquest. So this volume is out of print, though I believe you can still find it on Amazon for fairly inexpensive. But you don't need to. And I'll go a little bit more into that. So the Hallowquest course itself is a bit more than a year. I'd say a year and a day, but that's the main set of lessons. But there are a set of pre-lessons and a set of after lessons. So you probably want to say probably a year and a quarter, maybe a year and a half, depending on how you work through this. And it's celebration of the seasons. Depending on the version, Bach flower remedies play into it, though that's not something I really did. Why is this not staying on? Oh, here. So Bach Faroni's meditation plays into this, path working with the cards, and they even have their own circle casting for you to use with this. There's also music that goes with this that you, if you're musically inclined, you can play during any of the ceremonies that you might participate in. Okay. Sorry if you can see Gur in the corner there being a yawn. He's very uninterested. So this thinner volume has a lot of things. You know, there's a different fact about, you know, doing magical work and path working. Different questions, and you'll find this in a lot of books and different things like this, where they talk about what am I, you know, how am I supposed to feel? What if I think I'm deluding myself? You know, those kind of things. Like, part of this is faith, right? So they talk about that. This goes right into the lessons, though, which include, you know, diary keeping, breathing, earthing and grounding, samples. You start with tasks. So you keep a diary every day. If you actually look at my blog, some of my early posts are one of my Hallowquests. I've done this 3 times. 2 out of the same book, not this one, though I have read this one. And 2 out of the most recent edition. And I guess I'm just going to have to keep playing with this and trying to figure out why the camera screen keeps turning off. But it appears to be recording, so that's good. The lessons. So the lessons mix study of the majors with study of the minors. You start with, of course, the Seeker or the Fool. And this really is mixed into meditation. So the Goddess of the Land. Now, interesting enough, and you'll see this in some of the other editions, the Goddess of the Land is on the back of this card, but you only see this pictured in one edition, and not this one. So a lot of this deck and what it's concerned with is also the renewal myth, where the king's health is tied to the land's health, and the whole death myth of you must destroy the king and he must be born anew in order for the land to renew every spring. Visualizations. At one point, I think you were able to buy some of these on tape, but I just read them into a recording and followed them that way. Do a lot of realm work and what the elements are. And then you get into part 2. So that's the first of the lessons, and then you have the quest for the hollows, which is the main set of the lessons. A lot more meditations, and here's the Black Flower Remedies, which they actually have them in the back of this one. And you start with the sword. And you can start these at the season of the year. I think I originally did season of the year and I followed it closely. Another time I did it out of order, where I changed the lessons depending on which I started, I think, in the summer and went to fall, spring, or fall, winter, and then spring. This last time I just kind of started when I wanted to start. And I figure it works both. And also, since I use a different elemental system, this one uses the straight Golden Dawn method. That worked better for me. So, you know, there's talking about shrines, but this version is very slim and has, you know, you go through, I think there's 60 lessons in total. Sorry, I'm going to click this so I can see what I'm doing. And see where I can get to here. So here we go. So then there's part 3, the Way of the Hollows, and this is the part. So that middle part should take a year and a day, and then you have this after part. The after part is really where these start to diverge. So I'll come back to what this contains in a bit. We're going to come to the next book. So this is the first book I got. I don't remember the name of the store where I got these in Fort Collins. It was the Elephant something. It was way up north. This is where it's first called Hallowquest, the Arthurian Tarot course, and this is the book I followed twice. And this one is probably the most complete, as in it has the most information. This one was published in 1997. And I believe you can still get copies of this. It is out of print, but I have seen copies on Amazon. Don't pay a ton of money. Really, really don't. Because there is a current edition of this, which I would recommend. But this one really goes, oops, hit the camera, really goes into the mythology. The cosmology of the Celtic world. The lineages. How, part of the underworld. What is the Grail Quest? What are the different modes of the Arthur legend? So there's the Celtic myths, there are the romances. How do they intertwine? How are they different? And a lot of the history and everything like that. And this was the first one that I tried and really was just really cool. So this is a really cool, I keep this in my tarot book actually, the Land of Logres. And it's a tableau of all the cards and how they fit and land and on the good board. And I just mumbled that because I can't say it, the chessboard. And you can see them right here in the middle. And otherwise, then when it gets into the actual lessons, I can do this. That's all the same. So here, the Goddess Land, this is the only one, like I said, that pictures the back of the card from the original in this lesson. So, and it's pretty much the same from there on out. I will say there is a spread / meditation / ceremony for each of the find it here, for each of the suits. And they're called auguries. I am probably mispronouncing that. And they are slightly different in this. In the first book, the Arthurian Tarot course, and this is the Hallowquest book, you get a keyword explanation, a deeper discussion of what it means, and then a question to follow. In this last edition, it's distilled down just to the question. So there is a little bit difference. And a lot of, like I said, there's a lot less mythology in this version. And that was probably a better way to show that than there is. This one really has a lot of the mythology. Now, like I said, don't run out and find this version. It's great if you want to follow it and read and everything, but a lot of this information is in some of Caitlin and John Matthews' other books. You can get it in a lot of scholarly works on the Arthurian myths, or even just reading the myths themselves. So you don't need to have this version to get that information. So then they came out with a new edition, and oh, here it is. Okay. So the newest edition, this is going to drive me nuts. I need to figure out why it keeps turning off. Or not the newest edition, but the new edition they came out with is in the little green box, and came with a little booklet, a little purple, and they came out with a lot of these editions, reprints. This is called the Connections edition. So these cards, they're a bit more glossy. So this is still pretty good cardstock and everything, but kind of matte. But these ones here, they changed the borders to all white and then put these little gold knots at the corners, and they changed the back. So the biggest change in this edition is that in the book they do reversals. So they added reversals to this. And what's really funny is that this is the deck that got me to stop reading reversals and really stop. And I never went back. So when they reintroduced them again, and I was like, oh, maybe I couldn't do it. I just stopped reading reversals at that point because every card is both positive and negative in different lights. the other difference, so this is a little bit, it has pretty much everything that the red book does. Again, a little bit less mythology. And this doesn't have all the correspondences that the red book does. But it does start, so with Pridewin's Anchor. This one has, for the first time, you see the Shield of the Soul Protector, which is, again, a full deck kind of spread. Not completely, but the full deck is involved. And it's actually a really interesting meditative spread. You have Madbound's Gate again. And I just took that card off. Merlin's Mirror. And this one also introduces Pathways of the Quest. And then that's it. You don't have those last 3 spreads. The Excalibur is gone. The Tree of Life is gone. And so is the Triad Tableau spread. But the cards are a bit glossy, like I said, but this is a pretty thick card stock. I believe these are out of print as well. And honestly, this is the deck that I read with every day. So this is, as I said, I use the companion spread, which is your daily spread that they give you in the Hallowquest, where you split. So you split them into majors, minors, and court cards, and pull one from each day to talk about your guardians, your path, your gifts for that day. And this is the one that I use. I kind of put this one aside. I love this one. You don't really get more out of the pictures. Let's see, I actually have. I love them both. They did a really good job with the printing. The colors are pretty on point for both. The image is a bit wider here, but I don't know. This one is the one I like the best. So this is the one I use. However, this is not the last edition. In fact, just a few years ago, they published a new edition, the Complete Arthurian Tarot, the Complete Arthurian Tarot, and this has everything that was in the red book, everything in Hallowquest, and a new edition of the deck. So, okay, so this one unfortunately came a bit damaged. The Sun card has a line on it. Some of the cards are a little bit tattered at the edges. Like, when they got these all separated out, it's like this was the deck that was on the top. And it got damaged when they opened the box to pack them in their actual box. The box that it comes in is just it's a box kind of like this, but the size of the book. It was kind of flimsy and everything, and it did not last. The other thing, the cards are a bit more matte. Obviously, it's gone back to all black borders, but they kept the knots, and I really liked that. But the cards are, and some people like this, and some people don't. They're still good cardstock, but they're very papery. They took off the gloss, which is good, but I just don't like them as much, and I wanted to because I really like the black borders. The backs are the same as the last edition, still reversible. And as far as the colors in the edition, you see it's pretty much a reprint of the white edition, and pretty true to that one. I really like Miranda Gary's artwork. She also did, excuse me, take a drink. She also did the Merlin Tarot, which is a Marseille type deck, with illustrated majors and pips for minors. But this is the current in-print edition, and it is a pretty hefty book, all printed in green, a dark green, and white, and contains the full Hallowquest. If you would like to do the Hallowquest and go through that path working, I would recommend this. It has been expanded. It has been changed a bit from the original, but all of the key points are there. And I don't believe you're really missing much. This is the one I just completed. And it starts out like with some very pretty borders and everything in here, just like the red book. Same way, it does not have the listing of meanings like the red book does. Well, that's what it does instead, is that each one has a little box where they keyword it, distill it down, and then they give you these questions here. So it's the questions: what makes things whole? What is being restored here? How can we enjoy it? And these are good things to meditate on per card, or even ask yourself if this is the card you draw. And they do the same here on the minors, kind of condensing this down. And then we get into the Hallowquest course, which starts out pretty much the same and goes through all the same steps. It has the circle casting, the companion spread, journaling, a little bit less on the mythology, like I said. But again, you can get this from some of their other books, reading the myths themselves. And there's a lot of material out there. And I really would recommend, if you're going to do something this way, if you're really interested, to read the myths. Read the Mamnon, read the romances. There's a lot out there, and even if it's fragmented and in a bunch of different places, it's just a very rich mythology. Unless you're a token who's like that crappy French stuff. But yeah, it goes for everything else and is, I think, really well done. This is one of the investiture of the sword. And then they lay out the cards to meditate on. This is one of the auguries. Now, as I said, the biggest difference in the Hallowquest itself between all the books is really the end lessons. So it actually, just like the red book and that little purple book, it goes in. So it has a Pride with an Anchor, the Mabon's Gate. And this one has the pathways of the quest that was introduced in the purple book. This one also adds the Land's Adventures spread, which is new, and it's a tableau spread, much like you might read from the Lenormand deck. I cannot pronounce anything today. It also has the Shield of the Soul Protector. And I really like tableau spreads. It's a more organic way of reading that I'm really starting to get into. But anyway, so it adds all that. And then you get to the end here, the Way of the Hollows. And so in this new edition, it talks about the protection of the powers and how to invoke them, using them as powerful medallions and amulets. The Grail Company, which all the lessons go over, talking about how each of the suits basically has a company of people that illuminate different things, have different meditations that go with each of them. For example, for the stone here, we have, turn this a bit, the Grail Hermit, the Stone Hollow, the Watcher of the Four, the Stone Queen, the Star, the Stone King, the Stone Maiden, Merlin, Taliesin, and the Stone Knight. And it talks about the mythology with those, as well as their guardianship. Let's see here. The triads, so they have a whole triad system with this, which I really like. That talks about different triads. Now, interestingly enough, in the blue book, in the blue Hallowquest book, they also have a triad of animals. So you'll see animals on each of these cards, and they'll put those animals in triads as well, similar to like the Druid Animal Oracle. And that's missing from these later books. And actually from the original book. It's not in the original book either. It's only in the blue book. So they also add in this latest edition a new augury, the Augury of the Land. And they also add a path ahead, which is another tableau type spread for meditation and contemplation. And they have some dedication in here. Here's the music. I've been trying to plug it in. I'm not very good into a open source music program so I can hear it. I was hoping to have it together for this, but I don't know if I will, because I'm not that good at that and I'm rusty. In the blue book, so there are a few different, let's see, Way of the Hollows here. So when you get to the end, they talk a bit more. They go on a bit more about the Bach flower remedies and the protections. Again, talking about the totem, so very similar to the Green Book. This one also talks about the sanctuary. So, Sanctuary of the Hollows isn't, I believe, in any of the other books. And doing a sanctuary spread, which is only in this book, and meditations on that. Now, it goes into the companies from here, but it is slightly different. So you'll see the same companies are all laid out, we just talked about. Earth Guardianship is there again. Circuits of the Land meditation. Now, here, this is not in the other books. So just like the Tree of Life that was in the red book or orange book, we go into the lesson 60 here is building the tarot tree, and this goes into chakras and the Tree of Life and Kabbalah a bit in here, and questions for you to meditate on, and they have a whole layout of where they would sit on the tree. And that's interestingly missing. Now, obviously, Kabbalah is not something that really goes with Celtic mythology and everything, but it is part of the tarot as a whole. So it's interesting that they did try to include it here, but ultimately left it out of later versions. They talk about the council, which is the different court cards altogether, which is not usually in other books. So the maidens, the knights, the queens, the kings. Talk about hollowing the land, and then when they get to the path ahead, so they have a reading in this version that's not in the other. It's called also the Games of Sovereignty. So they teach this from time to time. They have classes. I believe it's, if you go to Hallowquest.com, you can find out when those are, if they still have them. But they did, so this came out of a course that they taught. And they did one, so when they released this version of the book, they included this Games of Sovereignty reading, which again is not in any of the other versions, which is another big tableau kind of like year reading thing, and a meditation that goes with it, which is very interesting. And that's kind of the differences in this version. So back to the original version of the Hallowquest. This is a bit thinner. It goes right to the Sword Seeker. Oops. And invoking protection of the powers. Goes to the sanctuary. The sanctuary reading, and then it kind of talks about the companies again. And Earth Guardianship. So you can see there's just a few differences. Now this one does have building the tarot tree as well, that they removed from later editions, and talking about the chakras and the Tree of Life. I thought I didn't, but I am wrong. Go back to the council and the path ahead. Oh, this one does have the Games of Sovereignty. So I did not think Games of Sovereignty was in this one, but I guess it was. This would have been published just after that, so it makes sense. But yeah, not included in later editions. And I don't know, like I said, this edition was published, this newest edition was published, it's also by Connections, in 2014. So this is the latest edition, and honestly, if you really want to go through this, it's a lot of study. It will definitely change the way you work and the way that you look at tarot and approach it. And it was a first path-working thing that I'd done with tarot. And for me, it was just, I do the companions reading every day still. And I have for almost, oh gosh, when did I do this? It's almost been 20 years. So every day for 20 years. And it's these kind of courses that you go through really do affect the way you live and the way you treat things, and just become a really important part of your life. Not to say that this is the only school out there. Emily Peach books, if you've ever read any of those, she actually belongs to a school, which they used to have lessons online, but they've recently been suspended. I don't know if they'll ever put them back up. There's also, of course, Builders of the Adytum, which I belong to now. And recently, especially in the past, 4 or 5 years, a lot more tarot decks are coming with these year practices or path working and things like that, and especially ones that start as indie decks. And I really think that this is something big. If you really want to learn tarot and you really want to do more with it than read the cards, there's nothing wrong with just reading the cards and being a reader. That is also a wonderful path. But if you really want to work this into your meditative practice, into your magic in your everyday life, something like this really works. And if you have an affinity for Celtic mythology and Arthurian legends, I would completely recommend this. This is something that I really love and is near and dear to my heart. And I would see if something new has popped up. And I have quite a few of Caitlin and John Matthews' other works. If you really want to get more into tarot and learn, there are a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different pathways to do it. But this one is really one that stuck with me and meant a lot to me in my practice. I just kind of wanted to share it with you. I do recommend, I think that this is a good book, and having just gone through it, it really does hold up and do well, and has really added to and completed that practice where this one started for me. And like I said, I had a dear friend who I actually mostly knew online, but she passed away, and I ended up with this book when her husband was cleaning up some of her stuff. But ended up with that, and I think she had some of these other books, and she had a copy of the deck, and I think at least one person said, "Here, you must take these and do these." But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you so much for listening.